A poor janitor greeted the billionaire's deaf mom. His sign language left everyone in tears. When the poor janitor waved his hands in silent gestures toward the billionaire's mother, everyone froze in confusion. The elegant guests, dressed in designer suits and glittering jewelry, exchanged puzzled glances, unsure whether to laugh or frown. But then something changed, something no one expected. Tears began streaming down the old woman's face, soft and unrestrained. Her lips trembled as she raised her shaky hands, replying to him in the same silent rhythm. Gasps echoed through the hall. The billionaire's mother, who hadn't smiled or expressed a single emotion in years, was suddenly alive with feeling. The janitor stood humbly, his worn uniform wrinkled, his hands moving gracefully, telling her something that only she could understand. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not pitied. She wasn't a burden or an afterthought. Someone had reached her heart, not through words, but through the quiet language she thought the world had forgotten. The billionaire, watching from the distance, felt his chest tighten. His mother was deaf from birth, and despite all the tutors and therapists he had hired, nothing had truly touched her soul. He had given her luxury, comfort, and care, but never understanding. Now, this janitor, this man he'd barely noticed before, was giving her something priceless. After the gathering ended, curiosity got the better of him. He approached the janitor privately, his tone softer than usual. "How do you know sign language?" he asked quietly. The janitor looked down, his eyes filled with pain and gentleness. "I learned it from my daughter, sir," he said. "She was deaf. I wanted her to never feel alone." The billionaire paused, words caught in his throat. "Was," he repeated, realizing the past tense. The janitor nodded, his voice trembling. "She passed away 5 years ago. A heart condition. She was only 10. Silence filled the air, heavy and raw. The billionaire, a man used to boardrooms and power, didn't know how to respond. The janitor smiled faintly, wiping his eyes. "Your mother reminds me of her. The way she smiles when someone understands her. I couldn't stop myself from speaking to her." That night, the billionaire couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment, his mother's face lighting up, her hands moving joyfully, her eyes full of life again. He had spent years drowning in business deals, chasing success, trying to build an empire his mother could be proud of. But somewhere in the noise of ambition, he had forgotten the silence his mother lived in. For her, every day was a quiet world of loneliness surrounded by people who didn't know how to listen. He realized, with a pang of guilt, that his wealth had built walls instead of bridges. The janitor, who had almost nothing, had built a bridge in seconds, with kindness and empathy. The next morning, he went to his mother's room. She was sitting by the window, sunlight washing over her silver hair. When she noticed him, she smiled faintly, but her eyes were tired. He sat beside her, hesitated for a moment, then raised his hands awkwardly. His movements were clumsy, uncertain, but heartfelt. He tried to sign a simple phrase he had looked up late at night, "I love you." Her eyes widened, and then tears welled up again. Slowly, she reached out, guiding his hands, correcting his gestures. When he finally got it right, she nodded, smiling through tears. No spoken words could have carried that much meaning. For the first time in years, they were truly talking, not through sound, but through love. Word of what had happened spread quietly among the household staff. Everyone noticed the change in both mother and son. The billionaire started visiting her more often, learning more signs every day. Their silent conversations became the highlight of her life. The janitor, meanwhile, kept doing his job as usual, mopping floors, polishing tables. But his heart felt lighter. He never sought recognition, he only wanted to honor his daughter's memory. A few weeks later, the billionaire approached him again, this time with a different tone, humble and sincere. "You gave me back my mother," he said softly. "I can never repay you for that." The janitor shook his head. "Sir, you don't owe me anything. Just keep listening, with your heart." But the billionaire insisted. He had been thinking deeply about purpose, redemption, and how easily people are forgotten in a world obsessed with wealth. He offered the janitor a new opportunity, to manage a community center he was funding, a place for deaf children and their families to learn, connect, and feel understood. The janitor's eyes widened, disbelief washing over him. "Me?" he whispered. "But I'm just a janitor." The billionaire smiled. "No. You're a teacher, the kind the world needs." When the center opened months later, the billionaire stood beside his mother, watching as children laughed and signed to one another. The janitor was there too, guiding them patiently, his gentle hands full of life and love. The billionaire's mother placed a hand on her son's shoulder and signed, "You finally understand." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I do, Mom. I finally do." In that moment, the weight of years of neglect lifted from his heart. He realized that true success wasn't measured in riches or fame, it was found in the moments of connection, in the quiet gestures that speak louder than words. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the humblest people. The janitor had lost a daughter but found healing by sharing his gift with another mother. The billionaire had found redemption not through charity, but through compassion. And the old woman, once trapped in silence, now lived in a world full of love, where people finally spoke her language. The mansion that once echoed only with footsteps and whispers now felt alive. With laughter, with hands signing stories, and with hearts that finally understood what it meant to listen. The next day, the billionaire found the janitor cleaning the marble floor, his head bowed, quietly doing his work as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The billionaire stood there for a moment, watching him. He wasn't looking at the janitor as a worker anymore but as a man who had touched his life in a way no one else ever had. Slowly, he walked forward, his eyes red from a sleepless night of reflection. "You gave my mother something I never could, understanding," he said softly, his voice breaking halfway through the sentence. The janitor looked up, surprised, his eyes gentle as always. "You still can, sir," he said, his tone humble but full of wisdom. "You just have to listen, even without words." Those simple words hit the billionaire deeper than any business lesson ever could. For the first time in his life, he realized that listening wasn't just about hearing, it was about feeling, seeing, and truly being present with someone's heart. That evening, he went home earlier than usual. His mother was sitting by the window, a soft glow of sunset behind her. She looked up and smiled faintly when he entered, surprised to see him without his usual rush. He sat beside her, his heart pounding. Then, nervously, he raised his hands and tried to sign what he had practiced in front of the mirror the entire afternoon. His fingers moved awkwardly, but he managed to form the words, "I love you." His mother froze, her hands trembling, tears instantly pooling in her eyes. Slowly, she reached for his hands, guided them gently, helping him form the signs correctly. When he did, she nodded, her tears falling freely. She pulled him into her arms, and for the first time in years, she felt like she had her son back, not the billionaire, not the businessman, but the boy she once held close. That silent, "I love you," spoke more than 1,000 conversations ever could. The following days brought a warmth to the mansion that had been missing for a long time. The billionaire began spending more time with his mother, learning new signs every day. He started reading books on sign language, watching videos, and even practicing with the household staff. The janitor would sometimes help him between his cleaning rounds, correcting his signs patiently and laughing gently whenever he made a mistake. The billionaire didn't mind. For the first time, he enjoyed learning something that wasn't about profit or business, it was about love. His mother became happier, her eyes sparkling whenever her son walked in to greet her using sign language. The loneliness that had once surrounded her seemed to fade away, replaced by connection, laughter, and understanding. One afternoon, the billionaire invited the janitor to sit with him in the garden. "You know," he said thoughtfully, I've spent my whole life building things, companies, buildings, brands. But you built something more valuable in a single moment. You built a bridge between hearts. The janitor smiled humbly. Sir, I only did what felt right. Your mother reminded me of my daughter. When I saw her eyes, I couldn't ignore the pain I recognized. His voice cracked slightly, and the billionaire could feel the weight of those words. Your daughter must have been lucky to have you, he said softly. The janitor nodded, looking up at the sky. I like to believe she's still around, watching. Maybe she wanted me to be here, to help someone else feel seen. The billionaire's eyes glistened. Then maybe you were meant to help both of us, he replied quietly. Days turned into weeks, and one morning, the billionaire called the janitor into his office. The room that once felt intimidating now carried a sense of peace. The janitor stood nervously, unsure why he had been called. The billionaire smiled warmly. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About listening without words. I want to do something meaningful, something that gives others like my mother and your daughter a voice. He handed the janitor a folder. Inside were documents for a new project, a community center for the deaf, a place for children and families to learn sign language, connect, and find support. The janitor looked up, speechless. I want you to run it, the billionaire said simply. The janitor's hands shook. Me? But sir, I'm just a janitor. The billionaire shook his head with a smile. No, you're a teacher. You taught me what money never could. Tears welled up in the janitor's eyes as he clutched the papers. He had never imagined a second chance, never imagined that his pain could create something so beautiful. The billionaire reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Let's build something that truly matters, he said. And from that day, everything began to change. Months later, the community center opened its doors. It was filled with laughter, smiles, and the soundless conversations of hands moving gracefully in the air. Children ran around, their parents learning alongside them, their eyes filled with hope. The janitor, now dressed neatly in a shirt and tie, greeted everyone with warmth. He moved from group to group, guiding little hands, encouraging shy faces, and celebrating every small victory. His late daughter's picture hung on one wall, with a simple plaque that read, in every silent voice, there is a story worth hearing. The billionaire and his mother attended the opening ceremony together. His mother stood proudly beside her son, watching the joy spread through the room. When she saw the janitor teaching a little girl how to sign her name, she smiled and signed to her son, "He's an angel." The billionaire nodded, tears filling his eyes. "He really is, Mom." As the day ended, the billionaire looked around the center, seeing what true wealth looked like. It wasn't the buildings or the money. It was the happiness glowing on the faces of people who once felt unheard. His mother gently took his hand and signed, "You've finally learned to listen." He smiled back and signed, "Thanks to him." That night, when the billionaire returned home, he stood on the balcony looking at the stars. For years, he had believed success meant power, fame, and recognition. But now he understood that true success came quietly, often unseen, in the moments when you touch someone's life without expecting anything in return. The janitor had changed him forever, not through grand gestures, but through simple, heartfelt humanity. In the weeks that followed, both men kept in touch. The janitor would often send updates about the children's progress, and the billionaire would visit whenever he could, helping with donations and new ideas. Together, they built not just a center, but a symbol of compassion and redemption. And every time the billionaire signed, "I love you," to his mother, he remembered the man who taught him how to listen with his heart. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come through wealth, power, or status, it comes in the quiet gestures that only the soul can hear.